this seems to be almost a cautionary tale to the Joe Rogans of the world that are now signing deals with the likes of Spotify or whoever else moves into the space to have exclusive media on a particular platform. Does the recent news of Joe Rogan with the $100 million deal, does that frighten you in any capacity? Does it subvert what you think is so beautiful about podcasting?
Yeah, and it's probably more than 100 million, by the way. That's what I'm hearing from people who know him. It does. So there's an interesting book. Tim Wu at Columbia Law School wrote this book, and I'm struggling to remember the name. I don't want to say the wrong name, but he wrote a really interesting book about 10 or 15 years ago. And you'll find it if you look at his list of books, it'll be obvious. But he made the case that that's inevitable, that anytime you have a telecommunications innovation, that it's going to inevitably end up centralized control. And so his thesis would be, what you're seeing with Rogan is the start probably. It's not just Rogan, it's what Spotify got Gimlet, Spotify got Bill Simmons. So they're consolidating. That might be inevitable. And it's a little sad. I mean, so we'll see. I mean, I think what they're trying to offer, hopefully in the end, like a Netflix type model where they have a really nice interface and there's a lot of exclusive content there that's really good. And then eventually you say, well, why don't I just stay within this app universe? I don't want to deal with these other types of apps. So coin flip chance that will end up consolidating again, which will cause problems. But I do like the state that podcasts are in right now.
Yeah. I mean, it also brings up to mind that this business model, I don't think has succeeded very well in the past. If you look to something like Luminary, which has total exclusive content behind a paywall, people are remarkably displeased with it. I believe it has something like a 2.8, star rating on Apple's iTunes, for their sorry, not iTunes, but for their App Store. So it seems like people get very frustrated by it, which I guess is an encouraging thing. The fear that I have is Spotify is really good. I mean, their algorithms are fantastic. And they have and I've noticed this with my own habits. We switched over from using Apple Podcasts for what I usually listen to for all my podcasts, and now using Spotify because it directly, gives me the things that I'm looking to listen for. It generates playlists just like it generates music. So, I mean, do you think the algorithmic nature of these platforms needs to be removed? Or is it just or should it really be centralized on the individual to take the stance of, hey, I recognize that this is trying to, in some sense, coerce me into listening more, watching more?
I think probably the latter. I think the user is going to have to evolve their understanding of what's possible when a company has this much information on me. I mean, we went through a similar education process in, let's say, the 1960s to the 1980s, where we got a lot more savvy about advertising techniques on television. Because advertisements got smarter. They figured out how to do psychological engagement. So kind of reach out and touch someone in the AT&T ad, and you would cry, and you just felt like you wanted to be with AT&T. And then we kind of got savvy to that and realized, okay, these ads are kind of manipulative. You need to be a little bit careful. We probably need to go through that with algorithmically generated content based off of harvested data. And I think we have a long way to go before we actually get to that point of savviness. I have not seen a feasible proposal for how you can legislate that out of existence. There has been some attempts. I know like Senator Josh Hawley, I believe, has been trying to propose some legislation that would actually get at some of the addictive natures and algorithmic natures of media, but I think it's too slippery. I don't know how you legislate that. I mean, what is an algorithm? What does it mean to be optimized? I don't know if that's going to work, which is why I've been pretty relentlessly user-focused, which actually puts me at odds with a lot of other people into space. I mean, I would say this was one of the big fights I got in from, let's say, the national media core when I was promoting digital minimalism. So this was, pushback from the New York Times Book Review, pushback from the New Yorker, both of which are places I write. So I don't want to actually push back these publications. This was just it's legitimate critique, but there is this real pushback of why aren't you dealing with more systemic solutions about what we can do to the companies and what we can legislate. I think that's often the orientation of policymakers and the journalists who cover them is what's the big swing Georgetown style clever piece of legislation that we can launch. And I come at it from another way because I don't see a lot of that's going to make a big difference, but I do see social movement can make massive difference in terms of people's engagement with this. So I often come at it from, what can the user do to reform their relationship with these tools? Because I'm yet to see a lot of really compelling options. As much as some might want those to exist, there's not necessarily a ton of compelling options where we can solve this by just forcing the companies to be what we want them to be. That usually doesn't work out well. It's not how we dealt with tobacco. We didn't try to legislate cigarettes to no longer be addictive. We instead educated the public that, hey, you probably shouldn't be smoking cigarettes and kids aren't allowed to have them and you can't advertise them on TV. And beyond that, caveat emptor. And that probably was the better strategy.